Cyrene is the core of Amphoreus. I don't think this theory is really a surprise to anyone. I feel like there has already been quite a few hints of this being the case throughout the whole entire story. The 13 Titans' tomb, the tie to the Remembrance, and her new form is just to name a few. And for that reason, I don't think that's the main question here. While yes, it's not confirmed, I think most people have already made the assumption that Cyrene is the 13th Titan, the true creator of Amphoreus. So I believe the real big question here that is on everybody's mind is more along the lines of how and why? How is Cyrene the core of Amphoreus? How can she represent the 13th Titan? And why is she a child of Remembrance? While 3.6 on the surface seems to be a patch about reuniting the Trailblaze main crew, and trust me, I loved it for that reason, I believe that it was actually a pretext to uncover the truth of what Amphoreus really is. Not just an incubator for a Lord Ravager, not just a scepter abandoned by Noose, but also the core to one of the Remembrance's greatest secrets. So today we'll be going over what we currently know about Cyrene, the tomb of the 13th Titan, and why Cyrene might just be the core of Amphoreus. But before that, if you're a fan of Hoyo games, you would know that one of the biggest struggles is getting your hands on good quality figures and merch. And as you can see, I collect them, which is why I'm so happy to say that Bahomu is the sponsor for today's video, and the ones that sent me this amazing Qingque figure. Bahomu is a merchant figure store that focuses around games such as Honkai Star Rail, Zenless Zone Zero, Genshin Impact, and many more. And yes, everything is officially licensed. A couple things that I'm currently eyeing is this March 7th 1/7 figure, this Hu Tao 1/7 figure, and this adorable EOS Bangbu pillow that was actually featured on the live stream. But if none of that fits you, that's okay because they have so much amazing merchandise from all sorts of characters that I guarantee as a fan you will find something that's right for you. So click the link below to check out all the amazing options that Bahomu has. Also, for first-time buyers, you get 10% off of your first purchase. And if you want to grab this amazing Qingque figure for your collection, you can use code jorjor to get 12% off of the figure. Thank you so much, Bahomu, for sponsoring this video. Now back to the theory. It's important for us to first go over everything we currently know about Cyrene before getting into the speculations. Trust me when I say this, it's gonna be important. Cyrene was born in Aedes Elysiae, a town supposedly protected by Orynyx. She grew up training to be the priest of Orynyx and was the local diviner. Her and Phynon as kids accidentally wandered into the Remembrance Maze, the home of the fairies. She and Phynon had a great time there and even named all the fairies. They eventually left and grew up while training to become a priest and warrior respectively. It was eventually found out that they both had golden blood, making them Chrysos heirs. So to use their naturally gifted powers effectively, they planned to leave Aedes Elysiae to go train, then come back to protect their hometown. Before they left, they both went to the Remembrance Maze once again as the fairies had taken Cyrene's divination cards. There, the chief of the fairies warned them of the coming black tide. Phynon got a bit of cold feet about leaving Aedes Elysiae, so Cyrene held a divination to see what to do next. They then consulted Fates, which calms Phynon's mind. The black tide then attacks, and the chief asks the two of them to stay in the Remembrance Maze, as it is a place that the black tide cannot invade. Phynon still decides to go out and try to defend their village, but to no avail. After this event, both leave Aedes Elysiae. Now, there are a few things to note here. Aedes Elysiae is a straight reference to the Elysian Fields in Greek mythology, a blessed afterlife for heroes and the virtuous, characterized by an eternally spring-like landscape. Now, keep in mind, the word Elysium is very important here, but we'll be getting that later in this video. This reference to the hero's paradise seems to be very literal, as it is cut off from the rest of Amphoreus, a peaceful paradise that's separated from the chaos of the rest of the world. And fittingly, it is also the beginning and ending of every reoccurrence that the Trailblazer and Phynon go through, the literal beginning and end of the hero's journey. The Remembrance Maze is also very intriguing, as it is a place that the black tide cannot reach. And in the words of the chief, it is a forgotten realm the gods abandoned, and only Cyrene and Phynon were able to discover it. And I just so happen to remember a certain new new area in 3.6 that hasn't been reached by any Titan, was forgotten about by a certain godlike being in terms of Amphoreus, and was only found by a certain vertically challenged pink-haired girl. I wonder if that's gonna be important later. All jokes aside, it does seem like Remembrance Maze also has a connection to the Remembrance. It's damn near the same word, and the protection it has from the rest of Amphoreus may be due to the same reasoning that the 13 Titans tomb is also cut off. And the fairies also have a natural ability to pull up memories from the previous cycles. Once on Amphoreus, Phynon goes on his journey and Cyrene goes to Yonisopolis to study as a priest. Cyrene eventually becomes a demigod of time, taking after Orynyx. They later become the final Chrysos heirs at the world's end and see Amphoreus for what it truly is: a simulation. They then try to enact Era Nova, and at that point, Lygus reveals the truth of Amphoreus to them. They then make a choice to start the Eternal Recurrence, to stop the birth of Iron Tomb, using the power of remembrance that Cyrene received when she was a child from being gazed upon by Fuli. Cyrene would die at the beginning of each cycle to ensure that there would be no demigod of time, so Era Nova couldn't happen. She would then spend the rest of the cycle in the path space as a memo sprite, and when the cycle ended, she would collect the memories and read them to the databank of Amphoreus, the tomb of the 13th Titan. This continuous act would force the gaze of Fuli to ensure that the recurrence would continue until the Trailblazer arrives. On the cycle the Trailblazer was in, after gaining the gaze of Fuli, Mem would show up as their memo sprite. It's implied that Mem is the original Cyrene, the literal memory of her, from before the cycles happened, and later merged with the Cyrene in the 3.5 cycle, to ensure that her memories would stay and to save the Trailblazer from falling into the River of Time. The 3.5 Cyrene would then help the Trailblazer on their journey, and when the Trailblazer was trapped in the Exomyth, she would then ensure that the Chrysos heirs set up the Trailblazer for success against Lygus once they returned. On Everknight's instruction, she hid the world-bearing core flame in the River of Time, and waited in the cut-off corner of the world till the Trailblazer was about to bring in Era Nova. They were then kidnapped by Everknight, but through that was able to help restore March's memories, and then help the Astral Express reunite and bring in the final Era Nova. Now, throughout this summary of Cyrene's story, you may be wondering something. At what point does she become the core of Amphoreus? And that's a good question. And the answer is she never does. Because I believe she always has been. This now brings me to the mysterious tomb of the 13th Titan and why it's so important. In fact, I would argue that it is the most important area in all of Amphoreus. Hey, Future Jordan here. So throughout this video, I called this place the Tomb of the 13th Titan, when in actuality, the name is the Tomb of the Nameless Titan. I don't know why in my head I had it that it was called that throughout the whole entire video and throughout my whole entire research. I just literally realized while almost finished editing this video. But just know that it literally makes no difference. It's all been synonymously named with each other. The Nameless Titan and the 13th Titan, I'm referring to the exact same person and the exact same place. So just keep that in mind. It literally changes nothing in this video, but I just literally had it in my brain for whatever reason. Just, yeah, but back to the theory. You know what's one thing that always bothered me about Amphoreus? Why is it a world made for Memoria? How did that happen? There's never really been a clear explanation for that. Amphoreus being a simulation of an Emperor's Scepter doesn't give an explanation to why there's Memoria here. And supposedly there is an Emanator remembrance on Amphoreus, but we still haven't seen them. Or have we? See, there's one thing that's very peculiar about this databank tomb, and it's the fact that it acts very oddly similar to Fuli. It collects memories of each destroyed world that is then recreated from memories, and Cyrene brings them fresh memories of each world before it's begun anew, literally acting like a memo keeper. She even called it a garden of memories. It's all a little on the nose, isn't it? A place that reeks of the power of remembrance, that is also a databank that replicates the actions of Fuli and is cut off from the rest of the world, in a very similar way to the Eden garden of blessed insight, where Fully meditates around their own garden of collected memories cut off from the rest of the universe. I mention all these odd little connections to Fully to suggest something that might be a little out there. That the data bank itself is the Emanator of Remembrance. Whoa. Before you go click off this video and think that Jordan might have finally lost it, which, to be honest, not really that crazy of a thought, give me till the end of this video. Because remember, this theory is about Cyrene, not the databank. So as a viewer, you may have already made some connections. In all honesty, it's actually not a wild concept to think that a massive databank that stores more than 33 million cycles, which by the way is 33.5 billion years, could be an Emanator of Remembrance. We've actually more recently seen Emanators that aren't necessarily alive in the traditional sense. Dominicus is an Emanator of Harmony that is essentially a construct puppet that can bring in peace. Iron Tomb is a literal computer virus that brings destruction, so why couldn't a grand databank that collects memories also be an Emanator? Which is now a perfect time to talk about its name, the Demiurge Matrix. To give some background information, Demiurge is a philosophical concept of a subordinate god who fashions and arranges the physical world to make it conform to a rational and external ideal. Plato adopted the term, which in ancient Greece used to originally mean craftsman or artisan. And this definition aligns a lot with the original belief from the numerophile, the one true god that grants the world chaos from which order emerges. In essence, a creation god, very much similar to Gaia, Mother Earth that created the world from chaos, and the mother of titans, which is also something attributed to the 13th titan. So naturally, we can assume that the Demiurge and the 13th titan are the same being. Not really a stretch, but there's your evidence. But Lygus killed the Demiurge, and by that extension, the 13th titan. It's the reason why Evernight calls the databank the tomb of the 13th titan. And as I mentioned before, the assumption is that Cyrene is the 13th titan. But how does that work? Especially since Cyrene is noticeably walking around not dead, at least in this cycle. To be honest, it kind of stumped me for a bit too. Wait, what the fuck? But after doing some digging, I believe the answer can actually be found in March and Evernight's backstory, which may have just hinted to Cyrene's true identity. There is something very interesting about Cyrene that I don't think many people bring up, at least to my knowledge. And that's the simple conundrum of if Cyrene is from Amphoreus, then that would imply that she is also a simulated being, very literally made from zeros and ones. So how can she be a child of remembrance? If it was only about her being a mimetic entity, then that's not really that crazy to explain away. She was gazed upon by Fully and is a remembrance pathstrider, which would potentially give her access to the same abilities that make memo keepers mimetic entities. But she's not just that. She was called a child of remembrance, implying that she is one of the pure children of Anasraba. And according to the databank, it's theorized that they could be fragments of Fully that are scattered across the cosmos and may be special forms of remembrance emanators. While yes, the databank in lore is written by Dan Heng and is mainly his speculations, just the fact that it's written there in the game kind of implies something. Now, I'm going to leave most of my remembrance speculations, theories, and pointing out the ties to Buddhist beliefs in another video that I'm currently working on. I'm actually personally really excited for this video, so if you want to see it, maybe consider subscribing. But for the sake of this video, I'm only going to really explain enough to make this theory make sense. So with that being said, here's what I think happened. As a pure child of Anasraba, Cyrene would have naturally been encased in six-phased ice, similar to March, and according to the databank, shot somewhere in the cosmos. Where she landed could have been right in a place where Lygus could find her, or even possibly already inside of the scepter itself. Fully could have foreseen that Amphoreus would bring about a great amount of memories and decide to send one of their fragments there. Time seems to be a bit more fluid for the remembrance. There's actually a few examples of this throughout throughout the story. Either way, Lygus might have seen this as an opportunity. A child of the Eon of Remembrance with the potential capabilities of an Emanator just arrived at his doorstep, and probably exuding a massive amount of memoria. And as we saw in Penacony, with enough memoria, you can shape a world. So, in an effort to further his goal to birth Iron Tomb, he utilized memoria and mixed it with the calculations done by the Scepter to create a more realistic simulated world that could continuously lead to destruction. Then added memoria to accelerate the extrapolations and give much more accurate representations, emotions, people, paths, and everything in between. But prior to starting the experiment, Lygus killed Cyrene and used her body as the core of Amphoreus, utilizing the memoria to run the Amphoreus experiment. Just as Anaxa said, the world is made from memories, and Cyrene is the first Newspore, a very literal demiurge, a subordinate god that created the world. But this may not have been the end for Cyrene. As it was recently shown in the As I've Written data logs, there seems to be a Stellaron in Amphoreus, specifically in the Tomb of the 13th Titan, which apparently kind of proves now that Stellarons are just going to be an ongoing thing in Star Rail. So look out for that. With that being said, what is important about Stellarons is that they're able to latch themselves onto a path and grant a wish, and granting the one and only wish of a pure child of remembrance to collect memories. And so, in a very extreme way of granting that wish, which is par for the course for what we see from Stellarons, it revives Cyrene and transformed her into the Demiurge Matrix, a literal grand data bank that can contain seemingly endless amounts of memories that come from the extrapolations of the Amphoreus experiment. Now, remember when I said earlier about the data bank being the Emanator of Remembrance? Does it make a little bit more sense now? Because this would explain exactly why it replicates the exact actions of Fuli. It's the literal fragment and child of them. And remember the name of the protocol it runs?
Operation authorized. Protocol name, Elysium.
Elysium, the Greek paradise. And just to make sure it wasn't mistaken, Star Rail did write it in Greek. This right here is the cornerstone of this theory. For one thing, Elysium might actually be a direct reference to the Eden of Blessed Insight, the place Fuli resides in, also cut off from the universe, as Eden is also considered a paradise in Christianity. But more importantly, Elysium might sound very familiar to you, especially if you played Honkai Impact 3rd, as it is the inspiration for the character Cyrene is based on, Elysia. And now it seems a lot more plausible that the original Cyrene, the pure child of Anasarva, is the Demiurge Matrix and the Emanator of Remembrance in Amphoreus. Now, you may naturally be wondering, if that's the case, then how is there a Cyrene in the Amphoreus simulation? And that's a good question. Now, I'll admit this next part is a little bit more speculative than the rest of the video, but I do think it's a very realistic way to connect the dots. We know that the Demiurge Matrix is meant to replicate the actions and abilities of Fuli, and if it's Cyrene who is the very literal child of Fuli, then she might have inherited the ability to see into the future, albeit probably only within the realm of Amphoreus, because it has been stated that the Eden of Blessed Insight has the capability to see the future. There's actually been a couple examples of this, as the Demiurge Matrix knew the Trailblazer's name before they ever arrived in Amphoreus, implying that it knew about the adventures Cyrene and them had throughout Amphoreus. They were already recorded. And it may also be the reason why Cyrene is the demigod of time. And back in 3.5, when the Trailblazer was going through the memories of the first cycle, it seemed like Cyrene knew that the Trailblazer wasn't supposed to be there. And another interesting note is that the fates she brought up to console Phynon were memories of the Chrysos heirs from the cycle that the Trailblazer was originally in, 33+ million cycles later. So it could be that the Demiurge Matrix knew of how close the birth of Iron Tomb was, and in an effort to stop it, because it would technically stop them from being able to continuously collect memories, it created a simulated version of its original body to seek a solution. Though, on the other hand, another possibility that may actually be a bit more interesting is that it actually created the simulated Cyrene to collect memories of the birth of Iron Tomb, in a similar fashion to how the Memo Snatchers were sent to Amphoreus to collect the memories of the death of an Eon. But either way, Cyrene was born into Aedes Elysiae, which translates to, in Latin, the Tomb of Elysium. Wow, doesn't that sound just so oddly familiar? Cyrene, after growing up, meeting people, and experiencing Amphoreus, chose the eternal recurrence, really loving the world, which from what I understand of Honkai Impact 3rd, because I didn't play it, reflects a bit of Alicia's story. But this outcome might have not actually bothered the Matrix, as it was able to keep collecting memories, and having Cyrene act as a memo keeper, bringing memories back to the Matrix from each recurrence, always depositing them by telling a story. And this storytelling aspect of Cyrene, I believe, is the key here. Dan Heng said Cyrene might have been depositing memories in this way to keep her sane throughout the 33 million cycles, which could be very much true, but it might have actually had another grander effect. When you tell a story, no matter how accurate it is, there will always be a bit of your personality in there. Your voice, your matter of speech, your embellishments, your comments, your opinions, all of them will end up as a part of the story. And it's shown throughout the 3.6 story that Cyrene did that as well. So by that logic, every one of those 33 million plus stories that came into the system also included bits of Cyrene's personality, and especially the last couple recurrences with the Trailblazer, where she took a central part of the story. It's all recorded in the Matrix. And this effect is actually shown. When the database recognizes the Trailblazer, they speak in Cyrene's voice.
Welcome back. I'll be waiting for you.
Other than that, there has never been any indication of any form of personality from the Matrix, possibly due to the Demiurge never having left its ice shell or never interacting with anyone before dying. And so when Cyrene was there at the final Era Nova with the Nameless, her personality and memories merged with the Demiurge Matrix, reviving the pure child of Anasraba, the Emanator of Remembrance, Cyrene, or as you're probably going to refer to as Alicia. And that's the theory for today. Thank you so much for watching. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my Discord community for sharing these amazing insights and theories and inputs on the Discord theory channel. They really did help me flush out these ideas. So if you want to join this Discord channel and add your own inputs, you can click the link below and check it out for yourself. As I mentioned before, I'm working on a theory about the Remembrance and the pure children of Anasrava, so look out for that in the coming weeks. If you like these types of theory videos, let me know by liking and subscribing. And as always, you can leave your own thoughts and theories in the comments below. With that all being said, peace.